Staying in contact. I'm London Mitchell. A few weeks ago, we chatted with representatives of NOPRA, the Northwest Ohio Passenger Rail Association, on efforts to expand passenger rail service through Toledo. One way that might happen is if Congress approves legislation creating a national infrastructure bank. In this installment, we'll be talking to Alpheca Muttardy, the lead macroeconomist and a board member of the Coalition for a National Infrastructure Bank. So, we are not only focusing on improved transit, but on maintaining our entire infrastructure, highways, bridges, housing, which are all in need.
That is absolutely the case. And thank you very much for having me, by the way. As a macroeconomist, what I look at is all of the big long-term trends. And what I see is that we have not invested in our economy since maybe the 1970s. And we're falling behind. We have budget problems, and trying to pay for infrastructure through budgets is certainly not working. So the share of how much of our revenues, for example, have gone into infrastructure financing is dwindling. We used to spend about 2.5% of our revenues, now it's down to 1.5%. And other things have taken over, for example, military spending and that kind of thing. Our long history of the United States, however, is that we financed infrastructure very differently. We had four major infrastructure banks starting after the American Revolutionary War, when we had won the war against the British, but we were poor and destitute. And we had a lot of debt piled up to fight that war. So Alexander Hamilton and George Washington instituted a first bank of the United States. It was our first national bank, and it was used to finance manufacturing and infrastructure development. It was very successful. It timed out after 20 years, so we had to come along and do another one during the Monroe administration. That one built our canal system. And then again, it timed out. Abraham Lincoln wanted to build a third bank, but this niggly Civil War came along. So he instituted a national banking system and then used the same method of capitalizing the banks to get this national banking system started, and then use that to fund the Transcontinental Railroad. And a fourth bank came along under FDR. He inherited it from Republican Herbert Hoover. Had started it during when the Great Depression broke out. And it did all kinds of infrastructure projects, built dams, tamed wild rivers, built aluminum plants, mobilized us for World War II, put people fundamentally back to work during the Great Depression. All of those infrastructure and development banks did one thing. They directed the money and sequestered the money to go towards infrastructure investments. We simply cannot do that through the budget. We've tried now for 60 years. The only thing we had going really was the Highway Trust Fund. It's kind of run out of money because it was not pegged to inflation. Now we're really destitute. We have crumbling bridges. We have lead in our drinking water. We have the effects of climate change, which are flooding areas and picking up, sewage out of the ground and spilling it everywhere. We have dams that could collapse and inundate communities downriver. All of these things need to be fixed and repaired. And we have a terrible traffic congestion problem. We've reached the limit of what we can do with roads, and we need much more rail in our transportation mix. This national infrastructure and the big crisis of today is housing. We don't have affordable housing for people. We've created lots more jobs and had population growth, but the number of housing units created has not kept up. And now we've financialized housing. Big hedge fund companies are coming in and buying it up and escalating the prices. Rents are way up, houses are way up, and now housing is just simply not affordable, in addition to all the supply chain problems we had coming out of the COVID recession. So we need a big infrastructure push. The idea of a national infrastructure bank, which is enshrined in the legislation that's before Congress right now. The bill number is HR 4052, which was put in by Congressman Danny Davis from Chicago, Illinois, will build all of those things, and it will direct the infrastructure financing towards those areas. And this bank can be a big development project to get our economy going again. It will really boost the economy.
So I guess, two big questions for you. One, it seems to me that our government, especially the federal government, is really focused on short term, not long term. So how do we change the mindset to get people to think beyond, geez, I'm just been elected to Congress. I better get back into campaign mode because I've only got 2 years. So I've got to make an impression on people over the next 2 years, or I'm
This
not
is
going to get reelected.
You are absolutely correct. And this is why we need a permanent institution in place. We need a permanent bank that once it is enacted by Congress, it will take over to do all of the financing for these infrastructure projects. And by the way, it will not cost the federal budget a dime. In fact, it'll make money for the federal government, that it'll lift out the burden of infrastructure financing and cover all of the financing gap that's not being covered by other means. But it will be a long-term institution. This particular bank at the moment has no sunset clause in it. That means that it will be here forever, the same way that other financial institutions the government owns, like the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, is a permanent institution. This would be a permanent institution, and it would complement the budget. Whatever they are able to get through the budget on financing infrastructure, that's fine. But this will complement it and top it up and not cost the budget anything. In fact, it will make money for government because it'll grow the economy faster.
So my next question then is, who actually would oversee the bank and who would set its priorities?
Great question. So to make sure that the priorities don't get taken off track for political reasons or whatever, the bill itself very detailed explains what kinds of loans would qualify for financing from the National Infrastructure Bank. They would include transportation programs to build more rail, even bridges, roads, those other kinds of things. Community development projects to build affordable housing included. Communications, telecommunications, and electricity grids would be upgraded by this, and lots more water infrastructure, which we have not been able to finance since Nixon in the 1970s came up with the Clean Water Bill, but then took away gradually all the funding. So all of those sectors that the economy depends on, that businesses depends on, will be able to be financed by this. It's large enough to cover all of these items. So that defines what kinds of loans can come before the bank. Then who decides on the loans? There'll be a board of directors governing the bank. They'll be nominated by the president and approved by the Congress, the same as for other financial institutions. And then they'll be in charge of approving loans in accordance with the statute itself. So everything is set out in the statute. In addition to that, there are all the fiduciary rules that govern the operations of a bank to make sure that it stays on track financially. And then there will also be things like an inspector general, annual audits, reports to Congress, full transparency on all the bank's operations.
So the idea then is to really think, as I've mentioned, change the thinking from short term to long term.
One of the areas where we need this long-term thinking is on our transportation grids. As I said, we've reached the limits of what we can do with roads. We have terrible traffic congestion all along the Pacific coast and the Atlantic coast. This costs the economy dearly, billions of dollars in lost time sitting in traffic and wasted fuel. Our trucks are not moving fast enough. We need better transportation systems, and we need to pour more rail into our transportation mix to get inner cities moving along more quickly. This can develop a high-speed rail system all around the United States. It can complement the high-speed rail system with other commuter rail, link everything up into really great transfer stations for people to move from one system to another. The same was done again in China with their 3 development banks. They built 27,000 miles of high-speed rail. All of Europe has high-speed rail. You can go from one end to the other. Apologies. One end of the other on high-speed rail trains, and then you can drop down into subway systems and take those subway systems too. They were all paid for with banks like this one. And we can do the same, including around the Chicago hub area. We could build a really nice, which will boost the economy and people moving back and forth to work.
Again, a change in the mindset of Americans and move more to mass transit.
That's correct. I happen to live in the Northern Virginia area, which is a big, huge bottleneck. I don't even go out at rush hour anymore. We've had terrible traffic jams. We have one major highway going from Miami all the way up to Boston. We need high-speed rail on that line to take traffic off of that line. Right now, in the Northern Virginia area, that road is 5 lanes in either direction with tolls and stopped up during rush hour. We can do much better. We can have much more commuter rail and get ourselves back and forth to work much more easily.
Almost out of time, but I did want to go back to this idea that if we invest in the infrastructure, we're actually strengthening our economy.
That's very true. For example, when we were investing in infrastructure using the last bank like this, the Reconstruction Finance Corporation, that was boosted by FDR to get us out of the Great Depression and win World War II. During the time period of that bank, you could feel the economic effect of the operations of the bank because it boosted growth to about 5.5% per year. Now, lately, we've had only 1.8% per year growth, not even as much as the population is growing, very anemic. We must invest in our infrastructure to grow the economy. And guess what it's going to do? Create 25 million new great paying jobs, family sustaining wage jobs, lift people out of poverty. The lower 40%, 50% of the American public is living paycheck to paycheck and not making it. This will give them great paying jobs to support their families, and in addition, support business growth and grow the economy faster, bring in more revenues into the government, and solve basically our big debt problem as well.
Who are your champions on Capitol Hill?
We have about 38 members of Congress in the House of Representatives so far who have signed on to the bill. And they are from great states, Colorado, California, Pennsylvania, New York, every place that needs infrastructure, every place that needs affordable housing. Those members of Congress are coming onto the bill. So there's great momentum for the bill. We're planning for a Senate version of the bill as well, because it's a great economic program that we need to boost the economy. It would benefit either political party. It would benefit red states, blue states. It would really help rural Americas to get themselves out of their economic doldrums. It's a winner all the way around.
The legislation is H.R. 4052. I want to thank Alpheca Muttardy for being with us to discuss the effort to create a national infrastructure bank. For more information, log on to nibcoalition.com. That's our program for this week. I'd love to hear your comments. Email me through my website, londonmitchell.news. And please, join us again next week as we continue staying in contact.
Previous episodes of Staying in Contact with London Mitchell are available on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Podcasts, Podbean, the Suite 419 app, and londonmitchell.news.